Okay, using Google Screencast to present some information about proxies and proxy chains. So we're going to start on my Linux machine, which is on a NAT. Oops. See the IP address right there that we're interested in. So we're going to start by opening up Firefox and going to this site, which is a SNL video sketch. I'm going to push play. Right away, I get a message. The uploader has not made this video available in your country. So I'm in Canada. Video is in the United States, sitting on a server. And when I make a request, HTTP request, or any type of request, the source address is Canadian, and this server doesn't like that. It says, nope, you can't have this content. So to get around that, we could potentially use a proxy. And in this case, we'll start by trying to use proxy chains to get around this. So other things to note is that I have a server, DigitalOcean box that sits in the United States. So it has an American IP address, starts at 159. And we're going to use that. It's running Squid. So it's got an HTTP proxy running right now on port 3128. So if you have the latest version of Kali, proxy chain should already be there. And here's the configuration file, proxychains.conf. Open it up. You'll see I did make a change. You might want to make this change too. Is comment out proxy DNS. So we'll just use our regular DNS for now. I want you to notice that here, there's no comment. I say this is an HTTP proxy. This is the IP address of my DigitalOcean server in the US, and this is the port it's listing on. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and have our browser or possibly other applications be proxied through that port. And what happens is it's not routed, it's proxied. This machine will now make a request on our behalf. So any site that we're trying to get to will see this IP address instead of our IP address. That's what we want anyway. So I'll save that, and we'll type proxy chains Firefox. So now all my browser requests will go through proxy chains. Proxy chains will see that request, look for what proxy we're using, and send it on for us. All right. So push enter. Go to that site again. Oops. So same site. Let's see if we still get the message, the uploaded message. So we no longer get that message, and you can see that my video is working. So I'm able to see this SNL sketch. I'm gonna stop that. And so what's happening is my DigitalOcean box is making the request. So this server sees requests from the US and says, oh, yep, that's allowed. We'll allow that. And this happens, and everything's work. So you can see that my proxy chain was actually proxying traffic to a number of sites. Perhaps some of the ads or other stuff on the web page going to different places. That was all allowed. Another thing we can do, you've probably seen this one before, is if we open up, this time we're not using the proxy, and we go to what's my IP address. Let's see, so there's my IP address. If we want to change that, we could be using proxy chains. We could also go into preferences, of course, and go to settings. And there's my DigitalOcean server again. In this particular case, though, I'm only forcing my Firefox. Nothing else. If I at this point in time, only the browser is proxied. Where before, when I typed proxy chains, it could have been any application. I could have proxied Nmap commands. I could have done an Nmap scan or telnet or something else. So if we were to go back and do Nmap, for instance, we could type proxy chains, Nmap, and then So something like that. So what happens is, now, the scan worked great, but Google would see a source address of 159 rather than my real address. So perhaps if you wanted a little bit more anonymity, or maybe you can't get to that server from Canada, then there you go. So that's just an example of using a different application other than the browser in this case. Other things to note is there are websites out there you could search for a list of proxies, and then you could put a list of different proxies here, whether they're HTTP, SOCKS 4, SOCKS 5, put their IP address in their port, and if you want to come from a particular country, you could potentially do that. There's lots of open proxies out there. Now, I'm not saying you can trust everybody, but in a virtual machine, you are a little bit more safe. So let's move on now. We're going to try. So let's say now I want to run RDP, remote desktop, to this Windows machine. And let's say this command won't work. Why? Well, maybe there's a firewall. Windows doesn't allow me access. But if I'm a hacker, perhaps I've hacked into another Linux machine on that same network, or perhaps there's a bunch of rules that just don't allow us to get to Windows. Maybe this is all legit, and they don't like us going from this particular machine. To get around that, there's lots of different reasons we might want to do this. So in this particular case, I can set up an SSH proxy. I'm going to show you in ProxyChains what we're going to do. So we'll comment this one out. That's what was my DigitalOcean box. And we'll uncomment this one out. It says SOCKS 4 localhost quadruple 8. So I'm going to actually go through quadruple 8 on my own machine to get to a proxy to then get to my Windows machine. Okay, so we save that and make an SSH connection with a proxy. So that's proxy information there, and then my SSH connection. Okay, so I've made what I did here. What this command does is there's the SSH connection. Okay, this is the extra part. This is for SOCKS proxy, and what it's saying is send information to my own machine on port 8888. Anything sent that way will be proxied by this machine. So this machine will make requests on my behalf. All right, so I'll minimize that. And if I first of all type netstat, I can see proxy looks like it's up. I have an SSH connection, and I have something listed on quadruple 8. So now I can type our desktop. Sorry, I have to call ProxyChains our desktop, and the Windows IP address like that. So ProxyChains, when we call ProxyChains, it looks in the configuration file. It says, "Yep, you have a proxy right here." It'll forward that traffic here. It goes across the SSH connection, and then the SSH server 172 will make the request for me to our desktop. So push enter, and there we go. And the Windows machine sees a source address of 172 rather than my 176 machine. Okay, and you can test that out with TCP dump or Wireshark. Actually, we could do that right now. So let me see. I'll try and switch screens to my 172 machine. Give me a second here. I don't know that you can see this yet. It's a single window. Okay, so screencasting. I'm going to switch windows. TCP dump port 2389. So my screencasting, I want to switch screens if I can. We'll go to this one. All right, so you should see this one. I'll just do that. All right, So I'm going to start that RDP connection again. And you can see here and here that my other Linux box is making the request. So the Windows machine does not know that I'm actually coming from 176. So if there was a firewall rule that blocked 176 or only allowed 172, things are working. So I'm actually doing a proxy. I'm doing a pivot. I'm circumventing some firewall rules here, which is pretty cool. Let me go back to the other machine now. Right, hang on. My screencasting skills. Beginner. I'm just going to try and change Windows. There we go. Should be this machine. Okay, great. So now I'm back here. So last thing I want to show you with ProxyChains is if we wanted to, you can see how it says random chain and chain length. Well, if we wanted to, we could potentially use multiple proxies. So we could proxy to my machine, that little machine, and then get to our final destination. So this would be a couple layers of levels of proxying, a couple hops, which is pretty neat. And sometimes you need to do this due to firewall rules, or you're trying to get out of your network. You've got to bounce around networks and stuff like that. All pretty neat stuff. All right, so that's ProxyChains. Thanks.